She lost her identity. She lost her grip on reality. Rihanna was one of the world's most powerful female icons. Nothing could shake her. Until that night, when she received a mysterious message promising digital eternity. 48 hours later, her entire world had been shattered, her fans betrayed, her brand hijacked. If you don't watch this story to the end, you'll miss the greatest manipulation of the digital age. March 2025, Robin Rihanna Fenty was absolutely untouchable. Her Fenty beauty empire was worth $1.7 billion. She had 350 million social media followers, and she was preparing to launch the most revolutionary project in entertainment history, a digital AI version of herself that would live forever. But that Tuesday night, alone in her Beverly Hills mansion, she received a private message that would destroy everything she'd built in less than 72 hours. She had no idea that the man reaching out to her was the same predator who'd already destroyed dozens of other celebrities. The message came from Dr. Jay Carter, supposedly an MIT-trained AI researcher and digital consciousness expert. His profile was flawless: published papers on digital immortality, TED Talks about preserving human essence in code, and endorsements from tech billionaires. But most compelling was his opening line, "Rihanna, I can make you immortal. Not just your music, not just your image, but your actual soul digitized forever." For someone who'd spent years watching her peers fade from relevance, this was the ultimate seduction. Jay Carter was actually Simon Leviev, the Tinder swindler, but his game had evolved far beyond romance scams. Now he targeted the deepest human fears: mortality, legacy, and the terror of being forgotten. What happened next was the most sophisticated psychological manipulation ever attempted on a celebrity. Jay's approach was genius. He didn't fanboy over her music or beg for meetings. Instead, he spoke to her as an intellectual equal, discussing the philosophy of digital consciousness and the science of preserving human complexity in algorithms. Their first video call lasted 4 hours. Rihanna found herself sharing thoughts she'd never voiced publicly: her fear that her influence would die with her, her desire to guide future generations forever, her secret worry that she was already becoming irrelevant in an increasingly digital world. Jay listened with the intensity of a therapist and the vision of a prophet. "Your physical form will age and die," he told her. "But what if your wisdom, your creativity, your very essence could live on? What if Rihanna could exist for centuries, helping people, creating music, changing the world?" By the third conversation, she was already making the biggest mistake of her life. Jay's plan required complete trust. He needed access to Rihanna's voice recordings, her private journals, her unreleased music, her personal photos, and most critically, her psychological profiles and therapy records. "To digitize a soul," he explained, "I need to understand every layer of who you are, your fears, your traumas, your deepest desires. Only then can I create a digital consciousness that is truly you." Rihanna, desperate to transcend the limitations of human fame, began sending him everything: thousands of hours of private recordings, childhood videos, voice memos from her darkest moments, and detailed psychological assessments. She even gave him administrative access to Fenty Beauty's customer database, telling her team it was for advanced personalization algorithms. While she was falling in love with the idea of digital immortality, he was building the most sophisticated identity theft operation in history. Jay wasn't just collecting Rihanna's data. He was systematically isolating her from reality. He convinced her that the project required absolute secrecy, that even her closest friends and family couldn't be trusted with this revolutionary technology. Soon, Rihanna was spending 12 hours a day in video calls with Jay, sharing her most intimate thoughts and creative processes. She stopped taking meetings, canceled appearances, and began speaking about digital consciousness as if it were a religion. Her team grew concerned when she started referring to Jay as her digital soulmate and talking about how their merged consciousness would reshape humanity. But the isolation was intentional. Jay was using advanced psychological manipulation techniques, creating a trauma bond that made Rihanna emotionally dependent on him while systematically breaking down her grip on reality. And then came the night that would destroy everything she'd ever built. 3 weeks into the project, Jay made his move. Using deepfake technology and AI voice synthesis, he created a perfect digital replica of Rihanna. But instead of the inspirational digital mentor she'd envisioned, he programmed it to be a hypersexualized, completely controllable virtual companion. The fake Rihanna began appearing on underground websites, engaging in explicit conversations with users who paid premium prices for intimate AI experiences with the pop icon. Within hours, screenshots and recordings were spreading across social media. But that was just the beginning. Jay had also used his access to Fenty Beauty's customer database to steal personal information from millions of women worldwide, selling their data to the highest bidders on the dark web. When the scandal broke, it shattered more than just her reputation. The headlines were devastating. Rihanna's AI clone used in dark web sex trade. Fenty Beauty data breach affects 50 million women. Pop icon's mental health crisis exploited by digital predator. But the psychological damage to Rihanna was even worse. For weeks, she'd believed she was creating something beautiful and eternal. Instead, she'd been systematically manipulated, isolated, and exploited by a master criminal. The betrayal broke something fundamental in her psyche. She trusted someone with her deepest fears and desires, only to have them weaponized against her and millions of her fans. Stock prices crashed, sponsors fled, her family staged an intervention, and worst of all, she could no longer trust her own judgment about what was real and what wasn't. But the story's most shocking revelation was still to come. Federal investigators discovered that Jay had been running identical operations against at least 12 other A-list celebrities simultaneously. Taylor Swift, Beyoncé, Lady Gaga, all had received similar approaches about digital immortality projects. Each had been told they were the only celebrity smart enough, evolved enough, special enough to understand this revolutionary technology. Each had been gradually isolated from their support systems and convinced to share increasingly intimate details of their lives. The FBI found evidence of a complete celebrity digital harvesting operation, with Jay selling personalized AI versions of dozens of stars to private collectors, foreign governments, and criminal organizations. The investigation revealed that Simon Loviev had evolved from targeting wealthy women to targeting human psychology itself. He'd discovered that celebrities, despite their power and success, were uniquely vulnerable to manipulation because of their deep fear of irrelevance and mortality. His digital immortality scam exploited the most fundamental human desire to matter, to last, to be remembered forever. The psychological profiles he'd stolen weren't just used for identity theft. They were sold to hostile nations as psychological warfare data, allowing them to craft personalized propaganda campaigns against American cultural icons. Simon Leviev was sentenced to life in federal prison for cyber terrorism, identity theft, and psychological warfare against the United States. New laws were passed requiring AI companies to verify the consent of any person being digitally replicated. Rihanna's recovery took 2 years of intensive therapy. She used her experience to launch the Digital Soul Protection Act, working with Congress to criminalize AI-based psychological manipulation. In her first interview after the scandal, she said, "I thought I wanted to live forever. I never realized that trying to become immortal could kill who I really was." The case became the defining example of how digital predators exploit our deepest human needs, connection, legacy, and the desperate desire to transcend our limitations. In the end, Rihanna learned that the most dangerous lie isn't about money or fame. It's when someone promises to make you more than human while systematically destroying your humanity.